Red and blue lights flickered against Dr. Lena Evans's terrified face as she stood outside her luxury sedan, arms raised, surrounded by two white officers. Her trunk was open, personal items and medical supplies scattered across the pavement. Officer Dave Miller, his face a mask of smug authority, hovered close. "What else are you hiding, sweetheart?" His voice dripped with mockery. Lena's heart pounded. She'd done nothing wrong, yet here she was, treated like a criminal for simply driving home from a long shift at the hospital. Swallowing her fear, she asked, "Can I call my husband now?" Miller laughed. "Before we continue, tell us where in the world you are watching from. Drop it in the comments below. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful content like this. Not unless you want to spend the night in jail." But Lena didn't back down. She dialed a number. The camera zoomed in on her screen. Marcus Thorne, Deputy Chief, SCPD. Minutes later, tires screeched as a black SUV pulled up. Marcus stepped out, badge gleaming, face like stone. "Drop everything," he commanded. "Step away from my wife. Now." Everything froze. But how did it come to this? Let's rewind 12 hours. Before we dive into the story, let me know where you're watching from, and if you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe for more stories like this. The morning sun cast long shadows across the city skyline as Lena Evans stood in front of the children's hospital she ran, watching a new shipment of pediatric equipment being unloaded. It was the end of a long but successful week, marked by a fundraiser that had secured enough money to open a new wing. The event had been everything Lena hoped for, packed with generous donors and hopeful smiles from the families her hospital served. It felt like progress, like she was making a real difference. Her phone buzzed, a text from her husband, Marcus Thorne. "Sorry I missed the gala, love. This promotion is crazy. Home by 10, dinner on me." Lena smiled, shaking her head. Marcus, newly promoted to Deputy Chief of Police, had been swamped ever since the announcement. Still, he always found time for her, even if it meant late dinners and stolen moments between shifts. By the time the last box was unloaded and the hospital rounds were complete, dusk had settled over the city. Lena waved goodbye to the evening staff and climbed into her sedan. The route home was familiar, a 30-minute drive through quiet suburban streets, past rows of manicured lawns and cozy homes, the kind of neighborhood where people felt safe. Her Bluetooth crackled to life as she merged onto the freeway. Marcus's voice filled the cabin. "How'd it go?" he asked, sounding tired but warm. "Better than expected," Lena replied. "We raised enough for the new equipment and then some. The kids were so excited. Wish you could have seen it." "I wish I could have too," Marcus sighed. "But I'm proud of you, always." They chatted about small things, weekend plans, a friend's upcoming anniversary, until Marcus's dispatcher called him back to duty. "Love you. Drive safe," he said before hanging up. Lena glanced at the clock. 9:45 p.m. A quiet evening at home with leftovers and a movie still sounded perfect. She exited the freeway onto a quieter road where street lights flickered between patches of darkness. It was a stretch she'd driven countless times without a second thought, but tonight something felt off. In her rearview mirror, Lena spotted a patrol car trailing her. No sirens, no lights, just following. She frowned, checking her speed. 33 miles per hour in a 35 zone. No rolling stops, phone untouched, everything by the book. "Probably just heading the same way," she muttered, forcing herself to relax. But the cruiser stayed close, block after block, turn after turn. When Lena signaled and switched lanes, so did they. Her fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Finally, at a red light, the inevitable happened. Flashing lights erupted behind her, painting the interior of her car in harsh red and blue. Her stomach dropped. Why? The question echoed in her mind as she pulled to the curb, heart pounding. She wasn't speeding. She hadn't broken any laws. This was her neighborhood, her safe space. As the officer approached, hand already resting on his holstered gun, Lena forced herself to breathe. Routine stop, she whispered. Nothing to worry about. But deep down, she knew better. This didn't feel routine, not at all, and it was only the beginning. The flashing lights behind Lena Evans felt surreal, like a nightmare she couldn't escape. She pulled over, fingers trembling slightly as she shifted the sedan into park. The soft hum of the engine did little to drown out the pounding of her heart. In the rearview mirror, she saw the officer step out of the patrol car, a tall white man with a rigid posture and an unmistakable air of arrogance. His hand rested on the grip of his holstered gun as he approached, his eyes cold and unreadable. Rolling down her window, Lena forced a polite smile. "Good evening, officer. Is there a problem?" The officer, his badge reading Miller, ignored her greeting. "License and registration." Lena blinked. "Of course," she replied, reaching into the glove compartment. Years of the talk from her parents echoed in her mind. Move slowly, keep your hands visible, stay calm. She did everything by the book, handing over her documents without protest. "May I ask why I'm being stopped?" she ventured, her voice steady despite the unease creeping into her chest. Miller glanced at her license, then back at her, his lips curled into a smirk. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in the area. Your vehicle matches the description." Lena's breath caught. Suspicious activity? In a luxury sedan driven by a woman in professional attire on her way home from the hospital? The absurdity of the claim hit her like a slap, but she swallowed her frustration. "I'm the chief administrator at the City Children's Hospital. I just left work. There must be some mistake." Miller's eyes narrowed. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." Her grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Excuse me, I've done nothing wrong. Are you detaining me?" The officer leaned in, his face inches from hers. "I said, step out of the car, now." Before Lena could respond, another cruiser pulled up behind the first. A second officer, younger and more hesitant, emerged. Their flashlights cut through the night, beams dancing across her windshield. Real fear set in. 2 officers for 1 woman on a quiet suburban street? This was no routine stop. This was intimidation. "Okay," Lena murmured, unbuckling her seatbelt with deliberate slowness. "I'm complying, but I'd like to know why I'm being treated this way." Her calmness seemed to irritate Miller further. One officer, the younger one named Russo, moved to the passenger side, shining his flashlight into the back seat. The other hovered near the trunk, hand resting on his belt. As Lena stepped out, hands visible, Miller circled her like a predator. Any weapons, drugs, or illegal items at the vehicle? Her brows furrowed. "Of course not. I'm coming from my job at the hospital. There's nothing in my car except—" "Stay where I can see you," Miller interrupted, signaling to his partner. Without another word, Russo popped open her trunk and began rifling through the contents. A briefcase, a box of donated children's books, a spare set of scrubs. They were tossed aside like garbage. "Hey!" Lena snapped, the injustice finally boiling over. "You can't search my car without consent or a warrant." The older officer, Miller, chuckled. "Probable cause? Your attitude's enough for me." Lena's heart pounded in her ears. This wasn't just harassment. It was humiliation. She glanced at her phone, still resting in the cup holder. If she could just call Marcus. "Hands where I can see them," Miller barked, noticing her gaze. His hand moved toward his taser. Lena froze, swallowing the lump rises in her throat. This was escalating too fast. One wrong move, one misunderstood gesture, and she'd become another headline, another life reduced to a statistic. "I'm not resisting," she said carefully, her voice trembling despite her best efforts. "I'd just like to call my husband." Miller sneered. "You can do that after we're done here." Russo emerged from the trunk, holding up a children's book as if it were contraband. "What's all this?" Lena's patience cracked. "Those are books for sick children from the fundraiser I just left." "Are you serious right now?" The laughter that followed was sharp, almost cruel. "Funny," Russo muttered. "You people always have some charity angle, don't you?" "You people." The words hit like a punch. Lena bit her tongue until she tasted blood, forcing herself not to react. Reacting meant escalation. Escalation meant danger. Miller nodded toward the SUV. "Runner plates and license. Let's see what else she's hiding." One of the officers stepped away, radio in dispatch, while the others stood guard. Lena stood still, arms crossed tightly over her chest, every muscle screaming to flee, but she knew better. Running wasn't an option, not for someone like her. The car's interior was now bathed in harsh light, the spotlight from the second cruiser illuminating every corner like a crime scene. Her phone buzzed again on the passenger seat. Marcus, thank God. "May I retrieve my phone to call my husband now?" she asked, her voice clipped but controlled. Miller exchanged glances with Russo, who shrugged. "No sudden moves," Miller warned, as if she were a threat. Carefully, Lena leaned into the car and grabbed the phone. She pressed Marcus's contact, her heart hammering as the line rang. He picked up immediately. "Lena, you okay?" "I've been calling." She didn't wait for pleasantries. "Marcus, I'm pulled over. They're searching my car without cause. I need you here now." Silence. Then Marcus's voice, sharp and commanding. "Where are you?" Lena rattled off the street name, her voice cracking. "Please hurry." As she ended the call, she noticed the officers watching her more closely, their postures stiffening. They didn't know who she'd called, but something about her confidence unsettled them. Minutes crawled by like hours. Then, in the distance, she heard it, the low growl of an engine, growing louder by the second. A black SUV rolled up, sleek and deliberate. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Marcus Thorne, tall, broad-shouldered, and radiating authority in his deputy chief's uniform. His badge caught the streetlight, gleaming like a silent challenge. The officers froze. Miller's cocky smirk faltered. Russo stiffened, his hand instinctively dropping from his belt. Marcus's eyes swept the scene, landing on Lena first. Relief flickered across his face, quickly replaced by cold fury as he turned to the officers. "Somebody," Marcus said, his voice low and dangerous, "better explain why my wife is standing here like a suspect while you ransack her car." The air around them thickened as Marcus Thorne stepped forward, his badge glinting under the streetlights. His face was carved into a mask of cold fury, every muscle in his body taut. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Authority radiated from him like heat off asphalt. "I asked," Marcus repeated, each word sharp enough to cut, "why my wife is standing on the side of the road like a suspect while you tear through her belongings." Officer Dave Miller blinked, momentarily thrown off by the sudden shift in power. He squared his shoulders, trying to reclaim dominance. "Sir," he said, the word forced and bitter, "we received a report of suspicious activity involving a vehicle matching this description." Marcus's gaze flickered to the open trunk, where Lena's belongings were now strewn about like garbage. Children's books lay crumpled next to a box of medical pamphlets. "Suspicious activity?" Marcus echoed, his voice flat. "In a sedan driven by a well-dressed woman coming from a children's hospital fundraiser." Miller didn't flinch, matching the description of a vehicle involved in a recent string of burglaries. Lena, standing just behind Marcus, stiffened. "Burglary? Are you serious? I was at a charity event an hour ago." "Ma'am," Miller cut in, his voice dripping with faux patience, "I need you to remain silent while we conduct our investigation." Marcus took a deliberate step forward, placing himself squarely between Miller and Lena. "You've already conducted an unlawful search. Do you have probable cause? Did she consent to this?" Silence. Marcus's jaw tightened. "That's what I thought. Call your supervisor. Now." The younger officer, Russo, hesitated. He looked to Miller, who gave a nearly imperceptible shake of his head. "No need for that," Miller muttered. "We're almost done here." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "You're done when I say you're done. Call your supervisor." The tension was suffocating. Miller's face reddened, but he reached for his radio, his voice tight as he requested Sergeant Barnes's presence. As they waited, the humiliation continued. One officer, trying to look busy, rummaged through Lena's briefcase, holding up files as if they might contain secrets. Russo flipped through the children's books, muttering, "Never seen burglars use picture books before." Just then, another patrol car pulled up. Sergeant Frank Barnes, Miller's direct superior, stepped out, irritation etched into every line of his face. He was an older white man, heavy-set but solid, the kind of cop who'd weathered decades of controversy without ever facing real consequences. "What the hell is going on here?" Barnes barked, eyeing Marcus with obvious disdain. "Deputy Chief Thorne, I didn't expect to see you out here." Marcus didn't budge. "I didn't expect to find my wife treated like a suspect for driving home from a charity event." Barnes's gaze flickered to Lena, then to the mess around her car. He sighed heavily, like a man inconvenienced by paperwork. "We got a report. The officers followed protocol." Marcus's smile was humorless. "Is an illegal search and intimidation part of protocol now?" Barnes's lips thinned. "Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be, Chief. Your wife's free to go." Lena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. But Marcus didn't move. "No," he said quietly. "We're not brushing this under the rug. I want badge numbers, body cam footage, dash cam footage. Everything." Barnes's jaw clenched. "I'll see what I can do." "See that you do," Marcus snapped, "because if I find out footage mysteriously disappears, I'll bypass internal affairs and go straight to the media. We both know how that'll play out." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Barnes's face. He knew Marcus wasn't bluffing. Finally, Barnes nodded. "Thorne, take your wife home. We'll sort this out." Marcus didn't move immediately. He held Barnes's gaze until the older man looked away. Only then did he turn to Lena, gently placing a hand on her lower back. "Let's go." As they pulled away, she glanced in the rearview mirror. Miller stood rigid, hands balled into fists at his sides. "Marcus," Lena whispered, her voice tight with emotion, "they're going to come after us for this." Her husband's eyes, dark and resolute, didn't leave the road. Let them try. The next morning, Marcus filed a formal complaint, citing racial profiling and an unlawful search. The retaliation began subtly. A parking ticket appeared on Lena's legally parked car. Then another. A few days later, a patrol car was parked across the street from their house for hours. They were being watched. Then one evening, Lena left the hospital to find all 4 of her tires slashed. There was no note, but the message was clear. This was far from over. Comment number 1, if you think Lena had every right to defend herself, and what do you think Marcus's next move will be? Will his badge be enough to protect his family? Stay tuned. The station was unusually quiet when Deputy Chief Marcus Thorne walked into the Internal Affairs office. The folder containing the complaint and photos of the slashed tires clutched in his hand. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow. "You're sure about this, Chief?" the officer at the desk asked, his eyes flicking into the folder. "A formal complaint against Miller and Barnes? That's not just paperwork. It'll trigger a full investigation." Marcus's face was carved from stone. "I'm sure this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was targeted harassment." The officer sighed, but filed the paperwork. By noon, word had spread like wildfire. Officers whispered in corners, their eyes darting toward Marcus whenever he passed. Miller was conspicuously absent from roll call, but Marcus didn't fool himself into thinking that meant accountability was swift. It never was. The first real sign of the cover-up came just hours later. Marcus sat at his desk when his computer pinged with an internal email from records. Request for body cam footage denied. Reason: system malfunction. His stomach sank. He immediately called the records department. "It gets worse," the clerk told him. "The dash cam footage, corrupted file, can't be recovered." Jordan closed his eyes, fury simmering beneath the surface. "That's not a coincidence." "No," the clerk agreed. "It's a cover-up." Marcus grabbed his jacket and headed straight to Sergeant Barnes's office. The door was ajar and Marcus didn't bother knocking. Barnes looked up from a pile of reports, his face carefully blank. "Something I can help you with, Chief?" Marcus threw the printed denial notice onto the desk. "Body cam footage, dash cam footage, both malfunctioned. You expect me to buy that?" Barnes leaned back in his chair, lacing his fingers together. "Technology fails sometimes. You know how it is." "Don't insult my intelligence," Marcus snapped. "This isn't failure, it's a cover-up. Your officers broke the law and now you're burying the evidence." Barnes's expression hardened. "Watch your tone, Thorne. You're stepping out of line." Marcus leaned in, his voice dangerously low. "Out of line? My wife was humiliated for driving home from a children's hospital. Your officers violated protocol, and now you're protecting them. Be careful, Chief." Barnes's eyes narrowed. "You're making enemies you can't afford." "The only thing I can't afford," Marcus said, straightening up, his disgust barely concealed, "is staying silent." He stormed out, his heart pounding. This wasn't just about Miller anymore. It was systemic, protected, and far more entrenched than he had realized. That evening, Lena sat at the dining room table, staring at her laptop. News articles about police misconduct filled her screen. Her phone buzzed. A text from a civil rights group she had contacted. They received her complaint, but warned that without footage, it was an uphill battle. Stay safe. She tossed the phone aside, frustration boiling over. When Marcus walked in, his expression told her everything she needed to know. "They're covering for him," she muttered, her voice flat, "aren't they?" Marcus nodded, collapsing into the chair opposite her. "Body cam footage is missing, dash cam files corrupted. They think if there's no proof, there's no case." "So what now?" Lena asked, closing her laptop with a sharp snap. "We just let them win." "No," Marcus said firmly. "We go around them." The next morning, Marcus contacted an investigative journalist known for her fearless reporting on police corruption. They met at a quiet cafe where Lena and Marcus recounted the entire ordeal, from the initial stop to the missing footage and the slashed tires. "This isn't just about one bad stop," the journalist murmured, jotting down notes. "This is systemic, targeted, and it's bigger than just one officer," Marcus nodded. "Barnes is involved, maybe higher." The journalist's eyes gleamed with determination. "If you're willing to go on record, I'll make sure this story gets out." "Do it," Lena said without hesitation. 2 days later, the headline exploded across social media and local news stations. "Badge over justice when power protects racism." The article detailed Lena's harassment, the missing footage, and the department's stonewalling. The backlash was immediate. Protesters gathered outside the precinct, holding signs that read, "Justice for Dr. Evans, and who protects us from the police?" Barnes, blindsided by the media storm, called Marcus into his office, his face red with rage. "You really went to the press?" he growled. "The system was covered for corruption," Marcus said, not flinching. "The public deserves to know." "You've made enemies, Thorne," Barnes seethed. "Don't expect them to play fair." "They weren't playing fair to begin with," Marcus replied, his voice ice. By the end of the week, under mounting public pressure, Miller and Russo were placed on administrative leave. It felt like progress, but Marcus knew better than to celebrate. That night, as he and Lena sat on the couch, exhausted but hopeful, a rock shattered their front window. Glass sprayed across the floor. Jordan bolted to the door, but the street was empty. On the porch lay a spray-painted sign, "Snitches get stitches." Lena's face drained of color. "They're not done," Marcus muttered. "No," Lena whispered, her voice shaking. "But neither are we."